Hey, it's Jordan with the Young Turks in TYT Politics, and I'm here with a father-daughter duo of Henry and Zenaida. You both are California residents. You were Bernie Sanders delegates, and now delegates for Kimberly Ellis, who is running for the state chair of the Democratic Party in California. Definitely a Bernie-crat, I would call her, from my quick look at her. And what do you know? Some of the shenanigans that happened during the primary seem to be going on again. This weekend was the vote for the chair of the California Democratic Party. And now there is demands of an audit coming from your side. Can you kind of tell me from start to finish what some of the inconsistencies there this weekend were?
Well, just to clarify, we were not pledged to Kimberly Ellis. This came out of the delegate selection process. The state delegates, Zenaida and I are both ADEM delegates, which are elected delegates through caucuses locally. So we're here, we're representing voters in each one of our assembly districts. And then there are other delegates, there are delegates that are elected, and then there's delegates that are appointed by party folks or elected officials, and they're kind of akin to like super delegates. And then each constitutional officer has a congressional person, governor has a number of appointed persons that they can appoint. The majority of the folks that supported Kimberly Ellis were all elected delegates versus the super delegates or appointed delegates that supported Eric Bauman. But I just wanted to clarify that because that's really important, because we have the same problem that we had in Philadelphia, and we had the problem here in California also, just through the whole process. But we were free to vote for whomever we wanted. What I wanted to elaborate also is the fact that when the Democratic Party talks about unity, they want us to join them, their leaders. When we talked about unity, we got behind Kimberly Ellis, who was a Clinton supporter. She was about coalition building. I brought a lot of different people, especially Bernie Sanders delegates that came in. So we formed this broad coalition of progressives in the state of California to move forward our progressive agenda. And we are unified Democrats in California, moving our agenda through. Majority are Bernie Sanders folks, but we've gotten other people involved. But anyway, we wanted to go back, and your question was what happened. Well, the vote count was 1493 for Eric Bauman and 1431 for Kimberly Ellis.
Which is exactly 51%, which is the amount conveniently needed to avoid a runoff.
Right.
Exactly 51%.
So there was a lot that happened. It was a process that, one of the things that I was worried about is that last time when we were in Philadelphia, we got a lot of pushback from everything that you know well are aware of what happened. This time we had a lot of organized people. A lot of folks were monitoring. We had a system of monitoring our votes, and we believed that we had sufficient amount of votes to win the chairperson position. But we didn't, for whatever reason. So there is some documented irregularities that were reported to the Kimberly Ellis campaign, which led them to request a review. And I'm not privileged to give you the information on which those irregularities are, but there has been some different allegations about some irregularities reported. And if those are proven, then that is going to taint the election. The problem we have is is a private. We're not bound by law, but that doesn't mean that they can't be brought into a court of law. So we're waiting to find out that the audit started today, or review. Actually, better frame of mind is the review started to determine what the next step would be.
And let me ask you. I was told by other folks I spoke with that unlike the DNC and other votes, you guys were never ID'd to get credentials, which would be kind of important.
Well, here's the deal. All you had to do is show your delegate badge, and and that's probably the biggest problem, is the fact that anybody could get a delegate badge. I mean, if I didn't want to go vote, I could give you the delegate badge and have you go vote for me and just go into line and vote. And you may not be me. But so that's the question of, there's no validation. There's no process to validate who you are. And, once you're credentialed, that credential can go and gives you access to vote or access into the convention. And there's some serious questioning about the procedures on that, or whether people were that was actually validated. And it's not like voter ID. It's that the validation that you're entitled to vote for the chairmanship and the other constitutional officers.
We're elected delegates, not just like voters for any regular public office. We're elected to the state party to vote, and that's where the concern for ID would be, not because like a voter ID law.
Right.
And then there's also the question of proxies. So if you have a proxy, and if I'm a eligible delegate and I want to give my proxy to another person, I have to do so by filling out a form and putting a signature. There's some question on that process, because if there's close to 300 to 400 people that didn't vote. So there's a large margin of error. And if you're thinking about, it only takes 60 votes or 60 people that shouldn't have vote to change the whole election. But the key part of this is, when we were gathered to a potential victory party, which is our celebration, it was reported internally through our folks.
Our data.
Our data was showing us at 70 that we were leading 60-40.
No, I don't think it was a percent. It was when 70% of Kimberly campaign votes were collected, because after the way the Kimberly campaign operated on the day of the election was that after a Kimberly supporter had voted, they would have a check-in through the campaign to say, yes, I voted. And so that's why the Kimberly campaign has voter data questions, because the numbers that they were reporting had them significantly ahead based off that check-in. And so that's why there's a concern for irregularities, because the election results are significantly different than the data they were receiving.
And in terms of the proxy, obviously that would be people who aren't there, giving somebody the power to vote for them. Was there issues with those people that were given proxy votes weren't there, or were people who weren't authorized to be somebody's proxy voting? What do you mean by the proxy issue?
I've heard different rumors, and I don't know of any particular incidents, but I know that some have been reported on certain blogs about incidents that they question about the process. We felt we had a pretty good control over the majority of the process, because we were very, very diligent about IDing who our supporters are. So that's why we're confident that we won the election, and we're confident that that what we did was all of the up and up. The question becomes is there's some big question marks, and the legitimacy is questionable, and that's why we're fighting for a review, and which is, I guess, how obviously we're getting a review. So, but I cannot share the documented, but our campaign folks do have some documentation on some of the incidents. So,
and I've been told by other people that there were some threats that went on about, if you don't vote a certain way, you're going to lose your jobs, things like that. Did you hear of any of those things?
That was rampant. It was rampant. Even though how close we came within that amount, is you have Assemblyman, Speaker of the House, or Speaker Rendon made publicly told some people, people can vote their conscience, but his chief of staff was making calls, making alleged threats of that you need to vote the party line. There was a number of different people, because like I stated, each elected official, and then if there's a speaker or a majority leader, or they have a constitution, they had more votes. They specifically told people that they had to vote for Bauman, who they were publicly endorsing, had to support. Everyone says, well, there may be a secret vote. No, this is documented, because you have to sign your ballot. So all this information is public. Right. So if you were told, if you were told to vote for Bauman and you voted for Ellis, it would publicly be disclosed, and you would either lose your seat, or you would and also be challenged if you were working with the state legislator or whatever, or working within the Democratic Party. All that would be challenged. And we heard tons of threats of people were being threatened that if they voted that way, that they would lose their job or would lose influence, that you would never run in as a Democrat in this county again. So those kinds of threats were
sounds like things I've heard all around the country last year from the party who wants to unify. I wanted to ask, just on the eye test, when I was watching the video, it kind of looked like the room was flooded by pink, which was Kimberly Ellis's color. It seemed to me that there were way more, just visibly, Kimberly Ellis supporters in there. Can you kind of talk about, set the scene for what it looked like there?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that we had a lot of support. I knew that, we had been working and mobilizing our people, making sure people were getting to Sacramento. And I mean, we're talking about cost. We're talking about the same thing of $120 rooms, having to pay your dues. So we were really vigilant about getting our people up there, number one, and for them to vote. So when we were up there in the convention hall, when it just all of a sudden, when Bauman left the stage, it was like, boom, the sea of pink just broke out. Everyone broke their signs out. People were in their shirts, putting on their shirts. And it just went, I mean, you could tell from the eye test that it was not only visibly, but you could hear the level of passion.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And could you describe, because I remember at the DNC, you had, these establishment folks basically screaming at Bernie Sanders supporters for waving signs or, criticizing Hillary Clinton. Was there that kind of rhetoric after you guys were visibly questioning the vote?
It was like, I was telling somebody, I want to see what happens, because I want to see when there's a breaking point. Because, sitting down, we're talking to Bauman supporters. They knew we were Kimberly Ellis supporters. The little remarks were coming out, and not directly, but all of a sudden it started getting pretty contentious, and the one thing that I knew, that we had a large number of delegates, and I thought we had majority, which I think we did have majority, and we had each other's backs, versus at the national convention, we had to really had a problem with the amount of outsiders that were in that convention hall that were trying to push Hillary. So the one thing that I do know is that there was a lot of that, but it was not as constant, because there was a lot of people that were, I remember a couple of times where somebody was yelling at somebody, and all of a sudden there's like 10 people from Kimberly around trying to calm the other person down. So it was a little different. It felt like, we were more empowered. It felt like, we had everybody's back.
I want to ask you, Zenaida, as a younger person, no disrespect, you see all this rhetoric about, oh, are you happy now, Bernie people? You didn't vote for Hillary, or whatever the case was, and now you have a maniac. Do you, from things like this, where the votes seem to be questionable, it doesn't seem like a lot has changed from the primary or the general election? It seems like the same old establishment politics, the same old suspicious patterns happening. Does this make you want to, rally around establishment Democrats to go after people like Trump?
No, I mean, the problem was that, I guess the message we were receiving from people in our own party was, sit down, shut up, and wait your turn, work through the system. You have to climb your way up. And the thing is, progressives, we don't operate like that. And I guess our base for Kimberly Ellis is full of people who are sick and tired of that process. And so I think it's more of a generational divide in the party, where it's old school Democrats versus new school progressives in the party. And we built a massive coalition, not just on Bernie people, but people who were working through the Democratic Party for a great amount of time, but were sick and tired of the way it operated, and that's why they backed Kimberly Ellis. And so, like the point brought up earlier, we're the ones who are, quote, unifying the party, because we're bringing in people who were old school Democrats to work with new school Democrats. And I think, 50% of the room are people that are running on that narrative of new school. We need to redefine what it means to be a Democrat. We're tired of corporate Democrats. 50% of, quote, party insiders are thinking like that. And so I think, and these same people are going to be the ones voting for California Democratic Party endorsements for elected officials. So this should scare a lot of elected officials in the California Democratic Party, thinking that they will not get an endorsement unless they come to appease our side. And our side is people saying that we're tired of corporate Democrats or tired of the same old, incremental change. And so I think that's where, no, like we're not going to fall in line with establishment Democrats, and they shouldn't think that we will either.
And lastly, I mean, to me, common sense, whether you're progressive or establishment, whatever, 62 votes is pretty narrow. I'm pretty sure if it was the other way around, they would want an audit. What's so bad about having an audit with that narrow of a margin?
Yeah, like if we're serious about unifying, then we must trust each other. I'm not going to work with anybody unless I could feel that we have fair elections in this party. And so we should be, I guess, quote, the other side should be happy that we're trying to get transparency, because we can't move forward if we distrust our process. And that's where, that's where it's more crucial that we have voter transparency, that we have this election review, and yeah.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience. I mean, it was across the board. Our group of supporters is, I'm 62 years old. She's 18, so that's quite an area of. I've been at this for a while, since Georgia government until today's date. So it's kind of encouraging to see our youth, and one of the things that I do try to keep youth involved in the party. And our talking points has always been to party leaders is you're going to ignore a significant amount of the population by not including them in the party. We worked hard to get into Philadelphia, into the system, and then they disrespected us. I'm talking our people, the majority youth. We did the same thing now, and we're getting disrespected again. So what is it going to take in order for the Democratic Party to wake up? Tom Perez was there. He heard us loud and clear. It's time for people to listen rather than trying to tell us what to do. It's a message is resonating here in California and in all the other places. But here everybody talks about our supermajority. But what has our supermajority done for single payer health care? What's our supermajority done for some of the other issues, campaign legislation? What has it done? And it's still fracking. We can't get a fracking bill passed or signed by the governor. So it's all these things that everybody keeps playing this game. We have the majority. If we have this super majority that everybody talks about,
let's get shit done.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the challenge. And and one of the things that I see encouraging is that I think one of the things that articulate my daughter tells me is about that the millennials can have an eye for who's phony and who's not phony, and it needs to stop. Mm-hmm. Quit playing you're a progressive when you're not. We have people in this state that are Democrats that are more Republican than some moderate Republicans. So come on. So anyway,
I agree. Well, you should be proud. I see a young Turk on the horizon here in your daughter. So
good.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. I'll stay on this and follow through on whatever happens.
All right, great. There's a lot of stuff out there.
Thanks. Have a good one.
All right.